We're a little less than 1 week into Season of the Plunder, and obviously there's been a lot of stuff going on. Obviously, you know, we have the Arc 3.0 changes, the raid race, which was freaking insane, and now that the raid race is over, we got access to the rest of the Arc 3.0 fragments. And in this video, I wanted to talk about the new Warlock exotic, the Fallen Sunstar, and create a build around that, because let me tell you, this can get pretty insane. Let's just dive right into it. So obviously, we get new exotics every season. This is the Warlock one. It is a helmet called the Fallen Sunstar. Its perk, Ionic Conductor. Ionic Traces you create move faster and grant you additional ability energy. Nearby allies also gain ability energy when you collect an Ionic Trace. So Ionic Traces are not just exclusive to Warlocks anymore. They actually apply to all 3 classes across the board. And obviously, the cool thing with this, with Warlock specifically, they move faster, and there's also a benefit to your allies. So we can come up with some pretty cool stuff here. So let's go over what I'm using. So super wise, I'm using Chaos Reach. You can use Storm Trance if you want. I just find Chaos Reach to be good for, you know, boss DPS and stuff like that in case you need it. Ability wise, doesn't really matter what riff you're using. I just have healing on. I got Burst Glide on for the mobility. I have the Chain Lightning Arc melee, and the reason I'm doing this is because the cooldown timer for this is faster than Ball Lightning, and I'm gonna kind of explain why. But next, Grenade. Grenade doesn't really matter. You can choose whichever one you want. Like I said, you're going to be getting your abilities back very quickly. Just choose the one you feel comfortable with. I'd probably recommend Storm Grenade or Pulse Grenade, maybe Arc Bolt Grenade. Again, it's up to you. Aspects. Now, these 2 are important. First up, Lightning Surge. While sliding, activate your charge melee ability to blink forward, calling down lightning strikes that jolt targets as you rematerialize. Now, Jolt is a new debuff that they added with Arc 3.0. It's pretty much a chain lightning effect. So I would read the whole thing, but again, that's pretty much the summary of it. Next aspect is Electrostatic Mind. So defeating targets with arc abilities or defeating jolted or blinded targets creates an Ionic Trace. Creating an Ionic Trace makes you amplified. So again, blind is the other one. I think we're all familiar with blind. And then amplified. Amplified is a new buff that you gain. So your movement speed and weapon handling are greatly increased. After sprinting for a short time, your movement speed is further increased, and rapidly defeating targets with arc damage makes you amplified. So again, there's multiple ways to proc it to get amplified, but Electrostatic Mind makes it really easy. Now let's go over the fragments that I'm using. So first up, Spark of Beacons. While you are amplified, your arc special weapon final blows create a blinding explosion. So again, it can be any arc special weapon. Kind of nuts. Once you're amplified, it's great. Spark of Shock. Your arc grenades jolt targets. So again, you get that chain lightning effect. Next, Spark of Ions. Defeating a jolted target creates an Ionic Trace. Again, that's the whole basis of this build. And then Spark of Discharge. Arc weapon final blows have a chance to create Ionic Trace. Like I said, it's all based around gaining Ionic Traces. Now, the special weapon I'm using is very important. This is the new exotic fusion rifle this season that comes with the season pass called Delicate Tomb. It's kind of interesting, but let's go over its perks. So Trader's Vessel fires a wide horizontal spread when shot from the hip. Final blows of this weapon have a chance to generate Ionic Traces. So you caught it there. Powerful foes and opposing guardians always generate Ionic Traces. And then its other perk, Tempest Cascade. Collecting an Ionic Trace overcharges this weapon's next shot, jolting targets. So pretty much if you collect an Ionic Trace, you get that jolting effect. And as we saw, jolted targets create Ionic Traces. You can kind of see where this is going. Now I'm going to be going over some of the mods that I'm using, and I'm going to talk about at the end some of the mods you can substitute for other ones to make it, you know, just as effective. But again, for the helmet here, we're rocking Well of Striking. Picking up an Arc Elemental Well grants you additional melee energy. For the gauntlets, main thing to note is Elemental Ordnance. Defeating a combatant with a grenade spawns an Elemental Well that matches your subclass energy type. Again, we're on Arc, so it's going to be an Arc Elemental Well. For the chest piece, main thing to note is Melee Wellmaker. Powered melee combatant final blows spawn an Elemental Well that matches your subclass energy type. Again, we're on Arc, so Arc Elemental Well. For my leg armor, I'm using Font of Might. Picking up an Elemental Well that matches your subclass energy type grants a temporary bonus to weapon damage of that same elemental type. So since we're on Arc subclass, any Arc weapons get a bonus to their damage. And finally, for the class item, I have Bountiful Wells. Pretty much instead of spawning 1 elemental well, it spawns 2 whenever you create one. But then the big one here is Trace Evidence. Defeating combatants affected by arc debuffs, which is jolted and blinded, spawns an Ionic Trace. So again, that's more Ionic Traces we're getting. Now, personally, the stats I would focus on is Resilience. Obviously, Resilience is huge nowadays. You get a 40% damage reduction if you have 100 Resilience. It's very good. You cannot deny that. But I also have an alternative build where I pretty much have my grenade and, you know, my melee. So discipline and strength maximum. They're pretty much 90, 100. So I get those back very quickly. But I find that with all the Ionic Traces you're creating and all the elemental wells you're collecting, you're getting all that stuff back very quickly regardless. So that's why I opted for 100 Resilience. And weapon wise, like I said, primary doesn't matter. Again, the main thing here is Delicate Tomb. You're going to need this thing for the Ionic Traces. And then heavy-wise, I go with an Arc Heavy. I have Storm Chaser, but you can use just about anything. Doesn't really matter. This is just, obviously, Storm Chaser is really great for boss DPS and endgame stuff. So if you have one, highly recommend using it. Now, if you're not understanding the synergy, I'm going to try to explain it as well as I possibly can. First, starting off with the Elemental Well stuff. It's not the biggest part of this build, but it does help. Again, creating those Arc Elemental Wells from Elemental Ordnance, Melee Wellmaker pairing with Bountiful Wells. Then you pick those up. You know, you get bonus arc weapon damage because of Font of Might. You know, if you're rocking Well of Striking, you get more melee energy back. And just in general, whenever you pick up an Elemental Well that matches your subclass energy type, that gives you a bonus to your abilities. So again, you get those back faster on top of generating the Ionic Traces. And just remember, with Electrostatic Mind, any arc ability kills or any targets that are jolted or blinded create an Ionic Trace, and when we collect one, we are amplified because of Electrostatic Mind. So pretty much any arc abilities will allow us to be amplified. On top of that, the Slide Melee. Again, Lightning Surge. You jolt targets. That's automatic. With Spark of Shock, your arc grenades jolt targets, so you're automatically adding that debuff on. And then Spark of Ions, when you defeat a jolted target, that creates an Ionic Trace. And then on top of that, with the grenade, you also have the special weapon, right? So when you're amplified, which we just saw is pretty easy, your arc special weapon final blows create a blinding explosion. And then on top of that, arc weapon final blows have a chance to spawn an Ionic Trace. So with Delicate Tomb, again, final blows of the weapon have a chance to generate an Ionic Trace, but when we collect one, it allows the next shot to jolt targets. So on top of the fusion rifle automatically being able to jolt targets, with Spark of Beacons, you can also create that blinding explosion, causing the extra debuff, which, again, like we said, defeating any target that has a debuff on them creates an Ionic Trace. So anytime you're getting kills with your grenade, your melee, or Delicate Tomb fusion rifle, you're creating a massive amount of Ionic Traces. You're getting your abilities back very quickly, plus with the added benefit of you also helping out your teammates get their abilities back very quickly. Like I said, there's a lot going on, but just note that you're ad clearing like crazy and allowing for very, very fast ability regen. Now on the helmet I showed you guys, obviously, you know, Well of Striking on the helmet. I believe that the other mods, you know, Elemental Ordnance, Melee Wellmaker, Font of Might, and then Bountiful Wells are key for this build. You can maybe get rid of Bountiful Wells, but I'm going to be talking about some mods that you could potentially replace it with. One of which is something that, you know, you're not going to really be able to take a lot of advantage of unless you want to use something like Elemental Charge, which, if you don't know, you become Charge of Light if you pick up an Elemental Well, and if it matches your subclass energy type, you get Charge of Light ×2. That's not the point here. The point is heavy-handed. Now, this is a Charge of Light mod. Now, the main part isn't what I'm focused about, because while you're charged with light, you regain half your melee energy when you use a melee ability. That's not the thing. It's the second perk. While surrounded by multiple combatants, defeating a combatant with a fusion rifle, a shotgun, sidearm, or submachine gun adds ammo for that weapon to your reserves. That can be very, very helpful. Granted, if you don't want to rock Elemental Charge, you won't be able to take full advantage of getting your melee energy back. But again, I feel like, you can see this in the gameplay, you're getting all that stuff back really quickly regardless. So, again, that is one option you can do. Another thing, if you still want to do the Elemental Charge, you could pair that with High Energy Fire to where you get more bonus weapon damage on top of that. Another thing you could potentially do is Font of Wisdom. Again, if you pick up an Elemental Well that matches your subclass energy type, it grants you a temporary significant increase to your intellect, improving the recharge rate of your super. If you don't know what Font of Wisdom does, it pretty much takes your intellect from whatever it is all the way up to 100 for like 20 to 30 seconds, depending on what other mod you have on. So that's freaking wild. So you could potentially do that. You're going to be spawning Arc Elemental Wells like crazy, so there's not a big deal there. Another thing you could do is Well of Ions. Again, picking up an Arc Elemental Well increases your next melee to do, causes your next melee to do increased damage. I kind of messed that up. Slightly dyslexic, that's okay. So your melee, which by the way, the slide melee is freaking insane on the Warlock. You do a good amount of damage, and being able to do more damage is just absolutely insane. I know that was a lot to go through, but that, ladies and gentlemen, is my Fallen Sunstar Arc 3.0 build. I know there's a lot going on, but trust me, there is a lot of great stuff with this build, especially when working with your team. I'm going to be coming out with a review for this exotic and comparing it to another prominent exotic called Crown of Tempest for the Warlock, and I'm going to be showing the benefits of both and why I think you know, which one is better for what situation. But in any event, guys, if you like what you saw, again, you can always drop a like on the video, subscribe to the channel, and then turn that bell next to notifications so you don't miss out on another one of these videos. I am streaming now here on YouTube. It's DaveTVGaming. We're not on Twitch. Again, if you want to go follow the Twitch and do all that stuff, that link will be in the description. But just know we are streaming here 3 days a week, mostly Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. We will be doing King's Fall help. Don't worry, need help with it. Again, just come to the live stream. We'll see what we can do for you. And lastly, join my Discord. That link will be in the description as well. Obviously, Season of Plunder is in full force. People are looking to do activities, especially with the OG King's Fall raid back. People are looking to do stuff. People are showing off their god rolls. We can do all of that stuff, so you don't got to worry about it. But we also talk about other things, anime, PC tech, the 9 yards. All right, so in any event, guys, hope to catch you in the next video.